The last thing I remember before the floor gave way beneath me was the sound of the kettle screaming. I'd been standing by the sink, reaching for a mug, and then the tiles rushed up to meet my face. When I woke, the lights above me were too white, too loud. A nurse leaned over, gently tapping my shoulder. "You're at Asheville General. Internal bleeding," she said softly. "We're trying to find a blood match." I nodded, too dizzy to speak. My veins felt cold. My lips were cracked. A doctor spoke words like O-negative, critical, low hemoglobin, but I only heard one thing. "We've called your emergency contact. Your son." Cole? I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt small, embarrassed. I had almost changed that contact last month after the last phone call ended in silence, but I didn't. He came. White coat, stethoscope still slung around his neck like he'd just walked out of class. I whispered his name. He didn't look at me. He scanned the chart. "O negative," he asked the nurse. "That's me." Then he turned toward me, eyes cold and clinical. "I'd rather die than help a failure like you." The words didn't register at first. It was the way the nurse gasped and looked down that made them real. The sting came a few seconds later. Shame always does. He walked out without another word. The nurse hesitated, then brought the consent form. "We found another donor, ma'am. We just need your signature." My hand shook as I signed, my name barely legible. They wheeled me into transfusion. My blood pressure dropped again, and I saw spots dancing across the ceiling tiles. I focused on breathing, on staying alive, not for him, but in spite of him. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was setting through the window. Cole hadn't come back. He hadn't called. I turned my head to the side, swallowed pain, and stared at the wall. He'd made his choice. Now I would make mine. The hospital released me 3 days later. They offered a wheelchair escort. I declined. Pride or maybe habit, I wasn't sure which had more control anymore. The house was cold when I stepped inside. Not in temperature, but in presence. The silence was a familiar one, but this time it bit deeper. I set my bag down boiled water and poured it into the same mug I'd dropped during the fall. The crack along its rim looked like a scar. I didn't call Cole. I knew he wouldn't answer. He hadn't texted. Not even a single word check-in. Not even a lie. Instead, I sat in my chair and stared out at the dogwood tree in the yard, still clinging to the last of its summer leaves. I remembered holding him under that tree, when he was small enough to fit against my chest, when the world still felt full of second chances. He never knew he was adopted. I never told him. I'd hoped that love could make blood irrelevant. I told myself I was protecting him. But maybe I was only protecting myself. The memories came in a flood. Late-night asthma attacks when I sat beside his bed, with a rescue inhaler in one hand and his fingers clenched around mine in the other. Skipping meals so he could have the sneakers every other boy wore. Clipping grocery coupons until the paper turned soft. He never asked where I came from. Never asked what happened to my job, my savings, my life. He only asked for more. And I always gave it. Now I knew the answer to the question I'd avoided for years. I wasn't his mother. I was a landing pad, a bridge, a placeholder for someone he imagined better, someone he never even knew. I finished my drink, rinsed the mug, and placed it back on the shelf. Then I went to the hallway, opened the linen closet, and reached for the fireproof lockbox behind the blankets. I knew what was inside, and I knew whose name was written on the envelope I had never opened. I still remember the way the windshield looked shattered like ice across the pavement. The air reeked of gasoline and scorched plastic. Sirens wailed in the distance, but we were already there. I was the first one to reach the driver's side. He was slumped over the steering wheel glass and his neck, eyes open but lifeless. I moved to the back door. That's where I found him. A boy, maybe barely 2, wedged between a crushed car seat and a stuffed animal soaked in blood. He wasn't crying when I opened the door, just blinking. in shock. He started screaming when I lifted him. Cole, the mother, screamed as she stumbled toward us. Her hair was wild dress torn at the shoulder. Is he alive? Is he? I turned to her, holding him in my arms. He's in shock, I said. We need to move, but she didn't follow. At the ER, while we rushed him into triage, she stood frozen by the automatic door's arms folded. I can't go in there. I tried to reason with her. She looked past me. He distracted his father. That's why the car swerved. It's his fault. He's a toddler, I said, trying to hold my voice steady. Her eyes were dry, voice like stone. I can't raise that. I won't. We took the boy in. His leg was split open, blood pooling fast. The nurse yelled his blood type O negative. Rare. Unmatched in the system. Without thinking, I said I'm a match. I sat there still in uniform as they drew from my arm and rushed it to the table where he lay unconscious. The doctors stabilized him. He lived. By morning, the mother had vanished. No call, no paperwork. Just a boy in a hospital bed with no one to claim him. When the state worker came to file a placement request, I asked for a moment alone with him. He was awake by then, drowsy, watching me. I'll take him, I said. The woman blinked. You want to foster? No, I said quietly. I want to be his mother. I signed the first form just as he reached for my hand. Cole was curious from the start. The kind of boy who'd take apart the toaster just to see if he could put it back together. He liked flashlights, maps, medical kits. I gave him his first stethoscope at 5. It was plastic. He wore it like a crown. He called me Mom before he understood what the word really meant. He said it with sticky fingers and sleepy eyes, then later with a deeper voice and more hesitation. But it still counted. He brought me coffee when I worked double shifts, sitting on the couch, in my uniform legs aching. He'd wait until I exhaled, then hand me the mug with both hands, like it was something sacred. It always tasted better from him. At 16, he told me, I want to be like you. I want to save people. I felt something swell in my chest I couldn't name, a kind of pride that didn't need acknowledgement. Just him saying that was enough. But then college came. Scholarships, a new campus, new friends who drove better cars and wore clean shoes. I started hearing less from him. Our calls grew shorter. He started answering with, yeah, instead of hi, Mom. I saw him once at a school event talking to a classmate. She asked, who's that pointing toward me? He hesitated before saying, the woman who raised me. The words didn't cut at first. They just floated there, awkward and detached. Later, he laughed about it. It just sounded more grown up, he said. He never asked why I chose him, why I gave up overtime to help with homework, why the fridge was always full when the bank account wasn't. He never knew I spent 2 weeks eating peanut butter sandwiches so he could go to his 8th grade science camp. He just knew he went. And I drove him there. That was enough for him. I stopped correcting him after that. Let him say what he needed to fit in. If I was fading in the version of his life he was telling, so be it. But I kept the letter. I kept everything. I took the lockbox to the kitchen table. The same table where I used to lay out spelling lists and lunch money, where Cole once sat, drawing superheroes with bandaged knees and grape juice mustaches. I placed the box down gently, as if it still held something alive. The key was on the 3rd hook by the door. It had always been there, camouflaged among a dozen others. I turned it slowly, and the latch popped with a soft metallic sigh. Inside the pieces I had kept hidden even from myself. His first hospital wristband too small to fit around 2 fingers. The ER chart with my name scribbled next to emergency contact. A photo the nurse took of us the day I brought him home, both of us tired and blinking in the light. And the letter. Still sealed. Still folded neatly in its original envelope. Her handwriting, sharp, slanted, almost impatient. I held it for a moment before finally sliding my finger under the flap. The paper crackled as I unfolded it. He's yours now. Don't contact me. I never want to see him again. No explanation. No emotion. Just those 3 short lines. I had read the first sentence 1,000 times in my mind over the years, even without opening it. But the last line still hit like a slap. I never want to see him again. That's what I'd been shielding him from. Not the truth about his birth, but the fact that he had been left on purpose. Not lost. Not stolen. Chosen against. I never showed him. Never told a soul. I figured if I loved him hard enough, if I stayed long enough, he'd never feel the hole she left. But now, sitting in a kitchen that felt colder by the hour, I saw the truth for what it was. She walked away from him. He was walking away from me. I placed the letter back in the envelope, folded it twice, and slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I walked to the phone, picked it up, and dialed the number I hadn't used in 20 years. The number was still written in the back of my old address book, tucked between faded grocery receipts and a dentist's appointment I never kept. I stared at it for a long time before dialing, unsure what I wanted to hear on the other end. It rang once. Then again. A click. Maren. Her voice hadn't changed. Still smooth, still low, still distant. I swallowed. Yes, I said. There was a pause. Long enough to remind us both of everything that lived in the silence. You kept it, she said softly. I did. More silence. Then I said it. He's old enough now. Another breath. Old enough for what? To know what he became. She didn't ask questions, not the ones I expected. Not how is he, or did he ever ask about me, or even why now. Just one word. When tomorrow, I said, if you can, I can. Her name came back like a memory pulled from water. Vivian Lang. It had sat untouched for 2 decades in a locked cabinet and in the hollow space between truth and protection. I hadn't spoken it aloud since the day I watched her walk out of the ER without turning back. Do you want an address? I asked. I already know it, she replied. I used to drive by. Never stopped. But I know it. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask what that meant. Maybe she was trying to atone for something in her own quiet way. Maybe she just wanted to be close without being seen. I'll be there by morning, she said. I won't stay long. You don't have to. I just want to see what he looks like when he's cruel. The line clicked before I could respond. I set the phone down, went to the front door, and slid the bolt across the lock. I wasn't sure what would happen when she arrived. But I knew one thing. She wasn't coming for closure. She was coming to meet the stranger who once called her mom. He didn't answer right away. Vivian knocked again, sharper this time, then took a step back and folded her arms like she had all the time in the world. Eventually, the door creaked open. Cole stood there in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt, blinking like he hadn't slept much, like maybe something had been gnawing at him since the hospital. Can I help you? He asked. She smiled. Just enough to be polite, but not enough to be warm. You don't remember me, she said. But I remember you. He glanced behind her, confused. Sorry, I'm your mother, she said plainly. Your real one. His mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of something passed over his face, disbelief or calculation. She didn't give him time to answer. She stepped past him like she still owned the air between the walls. She walked into the apartment like someone returning to a house she once abandoned, looked around, saw his books, his framed certificate from the university. She didn't comment. You told the woman who saved you that she was worthless, she said, turning to face him. I'm here to explain what that cost. He stared at her, blinking. Wait, are you actually saying your yes? He took a shaky breath. But you left. I don't why now I left because I was afraid. Selfish. And weak, she said. I thought that was the worst thing I'd ever do, until I heard what you said to her. His hands trembled slightly. I didn't mean you did. That's the problem. She stepped closer, her voice lowering. She bled for you twice, once on the side of the road, once in that hospital room. I didn't give you that. She did. He dropped into a chair, his face pale. Vivienne didn't move to comfort him, just looked around one last time. "You're not the boy I left. You're something else now." Then she turned to the door, opened it slowly, and stepped outside, without looking back. And for the first time in his life, Cole had to ask himself who actually raised him, and why he never asked. He called me a few hours after she left. I knew it was him the second the phone lit up, even before I picked it up. There was a pause after I answered, like he didn't know what to say, or maybe didn't think I would. "She came here," he said finally. I said nothing. She told me everything. Still, I waited. Let him sit in the weight of it. The crash, he continued. "My dad dying at the scene. That she walked out on me in the ER. That you," he stopped, swallowed hard. "That you gave me your blood. That you brought me home." I stared out the window at the bird feeder he helped me hang when he was 10. "She said you never told me because that's what real love looks like." His voice cracked on the word real. I closed my eyes just for a second. "She's right," I said. There was silence on the line. A few shaky breaths. "She never said you adopted me." "I didn't have to," I replied. "You called me Mom." That was enough. Another pause. "I said awful things to you," he murmured. "You did?" "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." He didn't speak for a while. When he did, he sounded smaller than I'd ever heard him. I wish I could take it back. I thought about all the nights I spent watching him sleep beside a humidifier, how I memorized the sound of his breathing before I let myself rest, how I had once turned down a full-time promotion because it meant fewer hours with him after school. But love isn't a ledger. "I know," I said, "but knowing doesn't erase the hurt." "I want to come see you," he said, "if that's okay." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at the mug on the table, the one he used to fill with coffee when I came home tired. "I'll be home," I said softly. And when I hung up, I stood, went to the front hall closet, and pulled out the photo he hadn't seen since he was small. I heard the car pull up before I saw him. He didn't slam the door, didn't rush. Just stood by the curb like he wasn't sure the ground would welcome him back. I stayed where I was on the porch, wrapped in my blanket, coffee cooling in my hand. The sun was low, casting long shadows over the yard. He walked up slowly, each step, careful like approaching something that might break again if touched wrong. When he reached the steps, he didn't speak. Just looked at me for a long time. Then he dropped to his knees. His eyes were rimmed red, but no tears fell. He rested his hands on the edge of the porch shoulders, hunched like a boy again. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked quietly. I looked at him, studied the lines in his face, lines I had watched form over 2 decades. Anger, laughter, stubbornness, wonder, all of them mine to witness. "Because I wanted you to feel like you were home," I said. He stared down at the wood beneath his knees. "I thought you were just the woman who raised me. That there had to be someone else out there. Someone more important. There was someone else," I said. "But important? That was up to you." He reached for my hand, fingers trembling. I didn't move. I said something unforgivable. "Yes," I replied. "And you meant it." He didn't argue. He nodded. Just once. I could feel his breath catching, like the weight of the last 20 years had finally landed on his chest. "I didn't know what you gave up." "No," I said. "You didn't." The coffee had gone cold, but I didn't care. I wasn't waiting for warmth anymore. He sat back slowly, not rising, just shifting to sit on the step beside me, not touching. Just there. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence between us. I stood, went inside, and came back with the photo in a worn wooden frame, the one of me holding him that first morning in the hospital. I set it on the step beside his hand. The hospital sent a follow-up packet, routine papers, checkboxes, lines for insurance, allergies, contacts. I almost tossed it aside. Then I saw the blank under primary emergency contact. It used to say, Cole Calloway. I sat with the pen in my hand for a long time, not because I didn't know what to write, but because I finally did. I filled in the line, Vivienne Lang, not because I owed her anything, and not because she came back, but because she looked my son in the eye and told him the truth I had protected him from. She didn't come to reclaim him. She came to remind him who raised him. Cole still calls, not often. Sometimes he says, "How are you?" like he means it. Sometimes he just sends one-word texts. "Thinking of you, sorry, home." I answer when I can. I don't ignore him, but I don't wait for the phone to ring anymore. I keep the photo of us, me in scrubs, him bundled in blankets on the same shelf where I used to line up his school awards. Not out of nostalgia, but acknowledgement. That happened. That mattered. But I don't carry it anymore. I don't replay the hospital hallway, the tone in his voice when he said I was a failure. I don't revisit the look on the nurse's face or the cold of the consent form in my hand. That was the day I let go of being invisible. He was my son in every way that counts, and I loved him in every way I knew how. But love, I've learned, isn't the same as bleeding dry. I gave what I could, more than most would, more than she ever did, and maybe, just maybe that's enough. I slid the form back into the envelope, sealed it, and dropped it into the outgoing mail. Then I went to the kitchen, poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, and stepped outside, alone, unburdened, whole.